The Galactic Council chamber was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. They floated, crawled, walked, and slithered through the great hall, each one representing a species that had reached the stars. For 10,000 years, the Council had kept peace among the stars. They had built trade routes, shared knowledge, and created a civilization that spanned the galaxy. They believed they understood the universe and everything in it. Then they discovered Earth. The planet sat in a small corner of the galaxy, orbiting a yellow star that the natives called the Sun. When Council scouts first studied the world, they could not believe what they saw. The planet was a nightmare. Massive storms tore across its surface. The ground shook with earthquakes. Volcanoes poured fire into the sky. The gravity was so strong that it would crush most Council species within minutes. And the life forms that lived there spent every moment trying to eat each other. The Council classified Earth as a death world, a planet so dangerous that no intelligent life should be able to evolve there. They marked it on their maps with a warning symbol and moved on, certain that nothing good could come from such a terrible place. They were wrong. 300 years before the present day, a human ship appeared at the edge of Council space. It was a small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle, but it carried a message that would change the galaxy forever. The humans had achieved faster than light travel. They wanted to meet their neighbors. The Council was terrified. They had studied the humans from afar. They knew what these creatures were. Humans were predators, evolved from hunters who had chased their prey across the deadly plains of their homeworld. Their eyes faced forward, designed to track movement and calculate distance for the kill. Their bodies were built for endurance, capable of running for hours until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their teeth could tear flesh. Their hands could grip weapons. Their minds were sharp and cunning, shaped by millions of years of survival on the most dangerous planet the Council had ever seen. When the first human ambassador arrived at the Council chamber, every alien in the room felt the ancient fear of prey in the presence of a predator. His name was Daniel Hayes. He was a tall man with brown hair and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He wore simple clothes and spoke in a soft voice. He told the Council that humanity came in peace. They wanted to trade, to learn, to share in the wonders of galactic civilization. They had no desire for war or conquest. They only wanted to be friends. The Council did not believe him. How could they? Everything they knew about predator species told them that humans were dangerous. But they were also afraid of what would happen if they rejected the offer. If humans were as deadly as they appeared, turning them into enemies would be a disaster. So they accepted. They welcomed humanity into the galactic community, gave them a seat on the Council, and watched them with careful eyes. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries, and nothing bad happened. The humans built colonies on empty worlds, choosing planets that were too harsh for other species. They traded fairly, offering technology and goods in exchange for resources they needed. They helped other species when disasters struck, sending aid and volunteers without asking for anything in return. They laughed, they sang, they told stories and made friends. They were everything they had promised to be. The Council began to relax. Perhaps they had been wrong about the humans. Perhaps these predators had evolved beyond their violent nature. Perhaps peace was possible after all. Ambassador Daniel Hayes served on the Council for 40 years before he retired. His replacement was just as kind, just as peaceful, just as eager to cooperate. The humans never threatened anyone. They never started wars. They never showed any sign of the violence that had shaped their evolution. The Council stopped being afraid. They did not know about the Armada. Deep in the outer reaches of the Sol system, beyond the orbit of the planet Neptune, a field of asteroids drifted in the eternal darkness of space. The Council had mapped this region long ago and found nothing of interest. Just rocks and ice and empty void. They had not looked closely enough, hidden among those asteroids. Their hulls painted black to match the darkness around them. 2,800 warships waited in silence. They were massive vessels, built for one purpose and one purpose only: war. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand the fury of a star. Their crews were the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced, trained in every form of combat, hardened by generations of conflict on their deadly homeworld. And they were all asleep. Admiral Laura Mitchell floated in her cryogenic pod on the bridge of the Titan's Fury, the flagship of the First Armada. She was 32 years old, though she had been sleeping for 300 years. Her heartbeat was 1 pulse per minute. Her brain activity was barely measurable. To any scanner, she would appear dead. But she was waiting. Before humanity had made first contact with the Council, there had been a great debate on Earth. Some argued that they should reveal their full military strength, show the galaxy that humans were not to be threatened. Others argued for peace, saying that the galaxy would never trust them if they arrived with weapons drawn. In the end, they chose a middle path. Humanity would present itself as peaceful. They would hide their weapons, send away their warships, and prove to the galaxy that predators could be kind. They would earn trust through generations of good behavior, but they would not forget what they were. The Armada was placed into deep sleep, hidden away where no one would find it. The soldiers were given a simple mission: wait, sleep, dream of home. And if the signal ever came, if humanity ever faced a threat it could not handle through diplomacy, they would wake up. They would remember how to hunt. Daniel Hayes knew about the Armada. Every human ambassador knew. It was a secret passed down through generations, a burden they carried in silence. They smiled and made friends and worked for peace, all while knowing that in the darkness beyond Neptune, the wolves were sleeping. Hayes hoped they would never have to wake up. He had spent his life building bridges, not burning them. He believed in the goodness of the galaxy, in the possibility of a future where predators and prey could live together in harmony. But he also knew the truth about the universe. Peace was a gift, and sometimes gifts had to be protected. The Armada slept on, its crews dreaming of a world they might never see again. The galaxy spun around them, oblivious to the giants hiding in the dark. And on 100 council worlds, aliens went about their lives, never knowing that humanity had kept its claws sharp. Just in case. The signal would not come for 300 years, but when it did, the galaxy would learn what it meant to wake a sleeping predator. The Vorthok came from the edge of the galaxy, from a region of space that the Council had never explored. They came in ships that looked like insects, black and twisted and wrong. They came in numbers that blocked out the stars. And they came with only one purpose: to consume everything in their path. The first world to fall was Velrun Prime, home to the Valorni people. The Valorni were beautiful creatures, tall and thin with skin like polished crystal. They communicated through song, their voices creating harmonies that could bring tears to the eyes of any species that heard them. They had no military. They had no weapons. They had never needed them. When the Vorthok fleet appeared in their sky, the Valorni tried to sing to them. They broadcast their most peaceful songs, melodies of welcome and friendship that had touched the hearts of every species they had ever met. The Vorthok did not listen. Their ships descended on the planet like a swarm of locusts. They burned the crystal cities. They silenced the singers. Within 3 days, Velrun Prime was a dead world, stripped of every resource, its people gone as if they had never existed. The Council received the distress signal too late. Then came Kethmara, the ancient world of the Kethmari philosophers. The Kethmari had spent 10,000 years studying the nature of reality itself. Their libraries contained knowledge that could not be found anywhere else in the galaxy. They understood things that other species could not even imagine. But understanding the universe, did not help them fight. The Vorthik burned their libraries. They destroyed their temples. They took everything of value and left nothing but ash. World after world fell. The Shentari, the Volux, the gentle marine with their gardens of living light. The council watched in horror as their civilization crumbled, as species they had known for millennia vanished from existence. Speaker Vaelthos called an emergency session of the council. He was a Gelthari, a species that resembled a large mass of blue gelatin. His people had evolved on a world with no predators at all, a paradise of warm oceans and abundant food. He had never known violence. He had never even seen a weapon fired in anger. Now he was watching his galaxy die. The council chamber was filled with fear. Ambassadors from 100 worlds sat in their designated places, their bodies showing every sign of terror that their species could display. Some trembled. Some changed colors. Some released clouds of stress pheromones that made the air thick with the smell of panic. "We must do something," Vaelthos said, his voice shaking. "The Vorthik will not stop. They will consume us all." Ambassador Cathral of the Threx clicked his mandibles in despair. "What can we do? We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We have never needed them. The council was built on peace. Then we will die in peace," said another ambassador, her voice hollow with resignation. Daniel Hayes sat in the human section of the chamber, listening in silence. He was an old man now, gray-haired and tired, but his eyes were still sharp. He had served the council for 4 decades. He had worked every day of his life to build trust between humanity and the galaxy. He had believed that peace was possible, that the future could be bright. Now he watched that future burn. The other ambassadors were looking at him. He could feel their eyes, their hope, their fear. They knew what humans were. They had spent 300 years pretending to forget, but the truth had always been there, lurking beneath the surface of every interaction. Humans were predators. Humans were dangerous. Humans were Deathworlders. And now, the prey needed the predators to save them. Vaelthos floated toward Hayes, his gelatinous body quivering with desperation. "Ambassador Hayes," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Your species, you evolved on a world of violence. You must have weapons. You must have warriors. Please, we are begging you. Help us." Hayes closed his eyes. He thought as a granddaughter, living on one of the outer colonies. He thought of the children playing in the parks of New Geneva. He thought of the generations of humans who had worked so hard to prove that they could be peaceful, that they could be trusted, that they were more than the monsters their evolution had shaped them to be. And he thought of the Armada, sleeping in the darkness beyond Neptune. He had hoped this day would never come. He had prayed that the galaxy would remain at peace, that humanity would never have to reveal what it had hidden away. But the universe did not care about hope or prayer. The universe only cared about survival. Hayes stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "Speaker Vaelthos," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You are asking humanity to become what we once were. You are asking us to wake the predators. Do you understand what that means?" Vaelthos nodded, though Hayes could see that he did not truly understand. How could he? He had never known a world where survival meant killing. He had never felt the ancient fire that burned in the heart of every human, the instinct that whispered hunt and kill and survive. "We will do anything," Vaelthos said. "Please, save us." Hayes reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a communicator, old and worn, passed down through generations of human ambassadors. It had one function and one function only: to send the signal. Hayes pressed a button and spoke clearly into the device. "Fenris Protocol. Authorization. Hayes Daniel. Omega 7. The message traveled at faster than light speed, racing across the galaxy in an instant. It reached the Sol system. It passed the outer planets. It found the asteroid field beyond Neptune dot, and in the darkness of space, lights began to flicker. Cryogenic pods hissed open. Screens lit up with data. Engines that had been cold for 3 centuries began to warm. Hearts that had been still for 300 years began to beat. On the bridge of the Titan's Fury, Admiral Lavra Mitchell opened her eyes. She did not know where she was at first. Her mind was foggy, her body stiff and cold. The training took over, pushing aside the confusion, forcing her thoughts into order. The signal had come. The Armada was awake, thought, and somewhere out there, something had threatened humanity, badly enough that the wolves had been called to hunt. Mitchell pulled herself out of her pod and stood on unsteady legs. Around her, other officers were waking, their faces grim as their neural implants fed them information about the situation. 300 years. The Vorthik. 60 worlds fallen. She looked out the viewport at the other ships of the Armada, watching their lights come alive one by one. 2,800 vessels. 42,000 soldiers. The most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. They had slept for 3 centuries. Now it was time to wake up. Admiral Lavra Mitchell walked through the corridors of the Titan's Fury, her boots making sharp sounds against the metal floor. Her body ached from 3 centuries of sleep, and her mind was still catching up to the reality of her situation. But she had no time for weakness. The data streaming through her neural implant told her everything she needed to know. The galaxy was dying, and humanity was the only thing that could save it. The corridors of the flagship were coming alive around her. Soldiers and crew members stumbled out of their cryogenic pods, shaking off the fog of long sleep, checking their equipment, reporting to their stations. They moved with purpose despite their disorientation. These were not ordinary people. These were the warriors that humanity had trained for generations, the best fighters their species had ever produced. They had been chosen for this mission because they could wake from 300 years of sleep and be ready for battle within hours. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Peters fell into step beside Mitchell as she walked. He was her second in command, a man she had known since the academy. They had fought together in the Unification Wars, the last great conflict on Earth before humanity had put away its weapons and reached for the stars. He looked older than she remembered, though she knew that was just the effects of cryosleep. They were both the same age they had been when they went under. 32 years old, frozen in time while the galaxy changed around them. Status report, Mitchell said. Peters consulted his datapad. All 5 armadas are online. The first and second are at full strength. The third lost 2 destroyers due to power core degradation during sleep. The fourth and fifth are operational, but need another 6 hours for full weapons check. We don't have 6 hours. No, ma'am. We don't. They reached the bridge. It was a massive room, designed to command a fleet that could conquer worlds. Screens lined the walls, showing tactical data, ship positions, and the faces of captains from across the Armada. In the center of the room sat the command chair, a simple seat of black metal that had once belonged to the greatest admiral in human history. Mitchell sat down. The chair felt right. It felt like coming home. Open a channel to all ships, she said. The communications officer, a young woman named Nicole Torres, nodded and pressed a sequence of buttons. Channel open, Admiral. Every ship in the fleet is listening. Mitchell took a breath. She thought of the soldiers waking up across the Armada, the men and women who had given up everything to sleep in the darkness and wait for this moment. They had left behind families, friends, entire lives. Some of them had known they might never wake up. All of them had known that if they did wake up, it would be because something terrible had happened. She owed them the truth. This is Admiral Mitchell to all vessels of the Human Defense Armada, she said. 300 years ago, we made a choice. We chose to sleep while our brothers and sisters built a new future. We chose to wait in the darkness while humanity proved to the galaxy that predators could be peaceful. We hoped that we would never be needed. We prayed that the universe would be kind enough to let us sleep forever. She paused, letting the words sink in. The universe was not kind. While we slept, an enemy emerged. They are called the Vorthok, and they have already destroyed 60 worlds. They are coming to destroy more. The Council has begged for our help. Humanity has called us to wake. On every ship in the fleet, soldiers listened in silence. They did not need speeches to motivate them. They were humans. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day of their existence. They had survived ice ages, plagues, famines, and wars. They had clawed their way to the top of the food chain through nothing but stubborn refusal to die. They did not need to be told why they were fighting. They already knew. I will not lie to you, Mitchell continued. The enemy outnumbers us. They have 100,000 ships. We have less than 3,000. By any reasonable calculation, we should lose. She smiled, a thin expression that did not reach her eyes. But we are not reasonable. We are human. And today, we are going to remind the galaxy what that means. The channel closed. Mitchell turned to her tactical officer. Commander Torres, what is the current position of the Vorthok main fleet? Torres pulled up the holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared in the air before them, with red dots marking Vorthok positions and blue dots marking Council worlds. There were far too many red dots. The main enemy fleet is advancing on the Kelthric system, Torres reported. They will arrive in approximately 16 hours. Population of Kelthric's prime is 3 billion. The native species, the Shenari, have no military capability. 3 billion lives, Peters murmured. And we're their only hope. Mitchell studied the map. Her mind worked through the calculations, analyzing the enemy formation, identifying weak points, developing strategies. This was what she had been trained for. This was what every human officer had been trained for since the dawn of their civilization. The art of war. The Vorthok are overconfident, she said. They face no real opposition. Their formations are sloppy, designed for intimidation rather than actual combat. They think they're hunting prey. She stood up and walked toward the holographic display, pointing at the enemy fleet. They're wrong. We're going to hit them hard and fast, before they even understand what's happening. Fighter squadrons will target their command ships first. Destroyers will break their formation. Dreadnoughts will move in for the kill. And what about their numbers? Peters asked. Mitchell turned to face him. Numbers don't matter when you're fighting humans. We invented war. We perfected it. We've been killing each other since we climbed down from the trees, and we got very, very good at it. These Vorthok think they're predators because they eat weaker species. Her eyes hardened. They have no idea what a real predator looks like. The Armada began to move. 2,800 warships turned as one, their engines firing in perfect synchronization. The Titan's Fury led the way, its massive hull cutting through space like a blade through water. Behind it came the destroyers and cruisers, the carriers and dreadnoughts, the accumulated might of a species that had been born in violence and had never truly forgotten how to fight. They had slept. For 300 years, now they were awake, and they were hungry. Mitchell gave the final order, her voice cold and calm. All ships, prepare for combat jump. We hunt at dawn. The Armada vanished into hyperspace, leaving nothing behind but empty darkness and the fading light of distant stars. 16 hours later, they would arrive at Kelthric's, and the Vorthok would learn what happened when you threatened the world that humans had sworn to protect. The observation dome of the Galactic Council was the largest room in the station. Its ceiling was made entirely of screens, capable of displaying real-time images from anywhere in the galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Council had used this room to watch celebrations, treaties, and the peaceful expansion of their civilization. Today, they used it to watch a battle. Speaker Valthos floated at the center of the room, surrounded by ambassadors from every Council species. They had gathered here to witness the fate of the Keltric system, to see if the humans would really come, if the predators could really save them. Most of them expected to watch another massacre. The screen showed the planet Kelthrix Prime, a beautiful world of purple oceans and green continents. 3 billion Shenari lived there, gentle beings who communicated through patterns of color on their skin. They had no weapons. They had no warships. They had nothing but hope that someone would save them. Above their world, the Vorthic fleet descended like a cloud of death. There were so many of them. 100,000 vessels, black and twisted, their hulls covered in spikes and strange organic patterns. They moved in a swarm, filling the space around Kelthrix with their terrible presence. Their weapons began to charge, preparing to do to this world what they had done to 60 others. "It is hopeless," Ambassador Kethril clicked. "Even if the humans come, they cannot defeat so many." Valthos did not respond. He was praying, in his own way, to whatever forces governed the universe. He was praying for a miracle. He got one. The fabric of space itself seemed to scream. Across the battlefield, hundreds of points of light appeared, tearing through reality like wounds in the skin of the universe. The Council delegates gasped and trembled as the jump portals opened, each one larger than any they had ever seen. And from those portals came the human Armada. The Council had seen human ships before. They were modest vessels, designed for trade and exploration, painted in friendly colors with rounded edges and welcoming lights. The things that emerged from those portals were not friendly. They were not welcoming. They were weapons. The Titan's Fury came first, a dreadnought nearly 2 kilometers long. Its hull was black and scarred, marked with the wounds of ancient battles. Weapons bristled from every surface, cannon arrays and missile pods and things the Council could not even identify. Behind it came more dreadnoughts, then carriers, then destroyers, each one more terrifying than the last. They had names written on their hulls in Earth languages: the Crimson Dawn, the Defiant Star, the Unbroken Vow. 2,800 warships, and they were beautiful. Balthos had never thought he would find weapons beautiful. His species had no concept of military aesthetics, no appreciation for the art of war. But watching those ships emerge from the portals, watching them take formation around the Varthic fleet, he understood something for the first time. Humans had not built these vessels out of cruelty or bloodlust. They had built them to protect. Every cannon, every missile, every inch of armor was a promise. A promise that humanity would defend what it loved, no matter the cost. The Vorthic fleet paused. For the first time since they had begun their conquest, they hesitated. They had never seen anything like the human Armada. They had never faced an enemy that did not flee at the sight of them. The humans did not flee. They attacked. The battle began with the fighters. Thousands of small craft poured from the human carriers, moving in patterns so precise they seemed choreographed. They dove into the Vorthak formation, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. Vorthic ships began to explode, their hulls torn apart by missiles that seemed to find every weakness, every gap in their armor. The Council watched in stunned silence. They had never seen combat before. Not real combat. Their species had evolved on peaceful worlds, where the greatest dangers were harsh weather or scarce resources. They had no framework for understanding what they were seeing. It was like watching a force of nature, like seeing a hurricane tear through a forest or a volcano reshape the land. But it was not nature. It was human beings, thinking and fighting and dying. Admiral Mitchell, commanded the battle from the bridge of the Titan's Fury. Her voice was calm as she issued orders, directing ships, adjusting formations, exploiting weaknesses that appeared for only seconds. She saw the battlefield not as chaos, but as a puzzle, and she solved it with the cold precision of a species that had been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. Destroyer Group 7. Target their command cluster, she ordered. Carrier Group 2. Launch second wave. Dreadnought Line, prepare for main engagement. The Vorthik tried to respond. They had numbers on their side, and they used them. Wave after wave of their ships charged at the human formation. Trying to overwhelm them through sheer force, it did not work. Human pilots flew like demons, weaving through enemy fire with reflexes honed by millions of years of evolution. Human gunners tracked their targets with predator eyes, never missing, never hesitating. Human commanders thought 3 steps ahead, anticipating enemy moves before they happened and positioning their ships to counter. The Vorthik had never faced anything like this. They had conquered 100 species by being the biggest predators in the galaxy. They had never met a species that was better at killing than they were. Hours passed. The battle raged across the Kelthrix system. Ships exploded on both sides, their crews dying in fire and vacuum. The humans took losses, hundreds of vessels, thousands of lives, but they did not retreat. They did not surrender. They fought with a fury that the Council could not understand, and slowly, impossibly, they began to win. The Vorthik fleet crumbled. Their formations broke apart as command ships were destroyed. Their confidence shattered as they realized they were losing. Ship after ship turned and fled, abandoning their comrades. Running for the safety of open space, the Council watched the enemy fleet scatter, like insects fleeing a fire. Veilthos turned to Ambassador Hayes, who had been watching the battle in silence. The old human's face was tired and sad, but there was something else in his eyes. Pride, perhaps. Or grief. How? Veilthos asked. How did they do this? Hayes looked at the screens, at the burning wreckage of the Vorthik Armada, at the human ships holding formation around the planet they had saved. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, he said quietly. We learned to kill back. We spent our entire history fighting each other, developing better and better ways to destroy. We became very good at it. He turned to face the Council, his predator eyes meeting theirs. You asked us to save you. We did, but remember this moment. Remember what we can do, and pray that you never give us a reason to do it again. The Battle of Kelthrix lasted 14 hours. When it was over, the Vorthik Armada was broken. Of their 100,000 vessels, fewer than 8,000 escaped. The rest drifted through space as burning wreckage, tombs for the creatures that had thought themselves the supreme predators of the galaxy. The human losses were heavy. 372 ships destroyed, 12,000 soldiers dead. Each one of them had left behind family, friends, a life they would never return to. They had slept for 3 centuries, dreaming of a home they might never see again. And they had woken up to die in a battle for strangers they had never met. Admiral Laura Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Titan's Fury, staring at the list of casualties on her screen. She knew many of these names. She had trained with them, eaten with them, laughed with them. Now they were gone, their bodies lost in the cold darkness of space. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Peters stood beside her, his face gray with exhaustion. The enemy survivors are in full retreat, he reported. They're running for the Galactic Rim. Should we pursue? Mitchell shook her head slowly. No, let them go. Admiral, with respect, if we let them escape, they might regroup. They might come back. Mitchell turned to face him. Her eyes were tired, filled with the weight of command and the grief of loss. That's exactly what I want them to do. That's exactly what I want them to do. I want them to go home. I want them to tell everyone they meet what happened here. I want them to spread the word to every corner of their dominion about the day they attacked a world protected by humans." She looked back at the viewport, at the stars burning in the endless night. Fear is a weapon too, Ryan, and right now, we need the galaxy to fear us. Not because we want them to, but because fear will keep them from making the same mistake the Vorthik did. Peters nodded slowly, understanding. "And what about us? What happens to the Armada now?" Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the future, about the choices that lay ahead. The Armada had been built as a last resort, a hidden weapon that humanity hoped would never be needed. Now that it had been revealed, everything would change. "We go back to sleep," she said finally. "We return to the Sol system, we repair our ships, and we wait. The galaxy knows we exist now. They know what we can do. That should be enough to keep the peace for a long time. And if it's not? If someone else threatens the Council?" Mitchell smiled, a thin expression without warmth. "Then we wake up again." The communication officer interrupted them. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting a direct channel. Speaker Valthus wishes to speak with you." Mitchell straightened her uniform and nodded. "Put him through." The holographic image of Valthos appeared before her. The alien leader looked different than he had in the recording she had seen. His gelatinous form was still trembling, but not with fear. It was something else. "Oh, perhaps. Or gratitude." "Admiral Mitchell," he said, his voice soft with emotion. "The Council is. We do not have words to express what we feel. You saved us. You saved billions of lives. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Mitchell inclined her head slightly. "We did what was necessary, Speaker. Nothing more. It was more than necessary. It was miraculous. We watched the battle. We saw what your species can do." Valthos paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried an edge of something darker. "We also saw what you hid from us. 300 years of peace, and all along, you kept this Armada in the shadows. Why?" Mitchell had expected this question. She had thought about how to answer it during the long hours of the battle, as she watched her soldiers fight and die for a galaxy that did not truly understand them. "Because we wanted you to trust us," she said simply. "We knew what we were when we came to the stars. Predators. Deathworlders. Everything about our evolution told you to be afraid of us. If we had shown up with our full military might, you would never have accepted us. You would have seen us as a threat, not as friends." She took a step closer to the hologram, her eyes meeting the alien's strange gaze. "So we hid our weapons. We sent our soldiers to sleep. We spent 300 years proving that we could be peaceful, that we could be trusted, that we were more than the violence that shaped us. We earned your trust the only way we could, by being worthy of it." Valthos was silent for a long moment, processing her words. Finally, he spoke again. "And now? Now that we know the truth? Should we be afraid of you?" Mitchell considered the question carefully. She thought of the soldiers who had died today, the ones who had given everything to protect strangers. She thought of the generations of humans who had worked so hard to build a peaceful future. She thought of the children on Earth and the colonies, the ones who would grow up in a galaxy that now knew what humanity truly was. "Yes," she said quietly, "you should be afraid, but not for the reasons you think." She walked to the viewport and gestured at the stars beyond. "We are predators. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived because we learned to fight. That instinct is part of us. It will always be part of us. But we also learned something else on that terrible world. We learned to love. We learned to protect. We learned that true strength is not in domination, but in choosing to use our power for those who cannot defend themselves." She turned back to face Valthos. The Armada will return to sleep. Our soldiers will go back to their cryogenic pods and wait for the next time they are needed. We will continue to be peaceful, to trade fairly, to be good neighbors. But remember this day, Speaker. Remember what happened when someone threatened the worlds under our protection. And know that if it ever happens again, we will wake up. We will come. And we will hunt. Veilthus nodded slowly. You are saying that humanity is our protector, then? Our guardian? No, Mitchell said. We are your friends. Friends who happen to be very, very good at violence. Friends who have chosen to use that skill to protect rather than conquer. We are the wolves who guard the sheep, Speaker. And as long as we are here, nothing will harm you. The channel closed. Mitchell stood alone on the bridge, looking out at the galaxy she had sworn to protect. Behind her, the crew of the Titan's Fury began the long process of preparing for the journey home. For sleep. For the waiting that might last another 300 years. But she was not sad that she was proud. Humanity had proven itself today. They had shown the galaxy that predators could be kind, that violence could be used for good, that the most dangerous creatures in the universe could also be the most noble. The Armada would sleep, but the galaxy would remember. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the surviving Vorthik fled toward home, carrying with them a message that would echo through the ages. Do not threaten the humans. Do not harm what they love. For if you do, the predators will wake. And when they hunt, nothing in the universe can stop them. That was the day the galaxy truly understood. Humanity, not as peaceful diplomats who had evolved beyond their nature, but as predators who had chosen to be kind. And in the end, that was far more terrifying.